Hello and welcome back to Coven Season 3. This is a podcast where we commune with our dream coven, bringing to light the lost stories of enigmatic people throughout history whose fascinating lives echo the complex archetype of the witch. I'm Jenna.
I'm Coco.
And we are your hosts.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Not bad. Having a pretty good day today, I would say. How are you?
Yeah, me too. Got a lot of sleep, which I needed, and I'm excited to talk about my person. But
Yeah.
did you have a magic moment?
I do have a magic moment. The other day, going hiking, this is just like, it's not really a synchronicity. It was just like a really nice, it was just a magic moment. We went hiking to Morrow Point, down in Pacifica in the Bay Area. Have you ever been there?
Have we been to Pacifica? I don't know if I don't. Okay, yeah,
It's just
we
like
have.
just barely south of San Francisco, but it's right on the coast and it's beautiful. And so we were just hiking around on the cliffs of the ocean, and we hiked up this super steep part that at the very top we saw somebody made like a stone labyrinth.
Oh,
It looked like a
yeah.
labyrinth. So
Were
we
they
like
stacked or?
no, they were just like a labyrinth that you could like
Oh,
walk
okay.
through.
Oh,
So
cool.
it was just like a path that you could follow. And yeah, walking through, I was like, obviously we need to do the whole meditative practice of walking through and then coming out at the end. And yeah, I guess I'll just say, because there was a lot, I feel like, that came out of that experience, but I guess I'll talk about one epiphany that I had going through this labyrinth that actually ended up being a spiral. Like, it wasn't actually a labyrinth. Labyrinths are usually like, they're just a little bit more complex of a design. What we were walking through was just a big spiral that ended in the center. And then on the way out, you retrace your steps and you're supposed to like meditate on your question. And the main thing that I noticed from that, something that was unexpected, was on my way out of the spiral, I started feeling really disoriented and really just dizzy because you're walking in a spiral. And it made me realize energetically, when you are getting closer to the center of a spiral, you're going to feel energetically dizzier than when you're just beginning the spiral, than when you're just beginning the pattern, right? When you get closer to the center and it gets tighter and tighter circles, it's a lot more disorienting and confusing and unsettling than it is when you are on the outskirts.
Interesting.
Just entering or just leaving. So do with that what you will.
That's a good magic moment. I'll have to try that sometime.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you do you want to take a look?
Yeah.
You want to explain what you're going to do?
Sure.
Here?
So this is a part of the show where I'm going to give a blind reading based on a birth chart that Coco is going to give me. Coco has researched someone that she's going to tell me the story of, and I don't know who she researched. So I'm going to look at the birth chart that she provides and give my perspective of who this person might be based on their astrology chart.
There you go.
Okay. We also have a lot of 12th house happening here. Same as my last person. So we've got a Cancer sun right on the horizon line. And is this an accurate birth
This
time?
is her exact birth. Yeah.
Amazing. It's not often that we find an exact birth time. Okay, so we have sunrise, we have Mercury in Cancer in the first house, we have a Leo moon conjunct Pluto, conjunct Saturn, all in the second house. We have Lilith exactly opposite the Cancer sun. Amazing. Okay, let's see. Mars in Taurus in the 11th house. Chiron got that exact quincunx. Got Leo, so her moon square
I will
Mars.
say it's not obvious.
It's not obvious.
No, and it wasn't obvious to me. As a matter of fact, I had to look at it for a long
Mm-hmm.
time, and it's still not that obvious to me.
Yeah, there is
But
a lot happening
but there's a
here.
reason for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the more I started, yeah, I'm
There's a
sure you'll
lot
understand.
happening here. I'm trying to just like take it in to interpret it. So there's a moon square Jupiter square and a moon square Mars. So there is like a little T square happening between the moon, Jupiter, and Mars. There's the sun opposite Lilith. There is, okay, Gemini 12th house with Venus there and with Uranus there. That is like, again, communicating the invisible. You know, being able to speak, use language to communicate the unknown, the confusing, the unconscious. And with Uranus there, it's like being able to communicate things that are revolutionary and unsettling or like shake things up.
Mm-hmm.
Venus there is, I'm assuming through some type of art, poetry, or because it's Gemini and it's Venus. So whenever like Venus is in Gemini in the 12th house, like that does feel like poetry or beautiful language. Or it could be like music. This could be the chart of a musician who has like a super transcendental sound. That Saturn, Pluto in Leo, conjunct the moon in the second house is interesting. Second house relating to resources and like independent like values and wealth and possessions. Somebody who, one would accumulate their wealth from things like performance, from being expressive. But with Saturn and Pluto there, that makes me think somebody who really struggled in the area of resources and wealth.
Bingo.
The sun opposite Lilith, sun in Cancer opposite Lilith in Capricorn. My person, Lucy Parsons, had the Lilith in Capricorn. And your person, Sheer Height, had a Lilith in Cancer. So that axis with Lilith involved is really anti-establishment, it seems. It's very patriarchal focus. Specifically, Lilith is always kind of, embedded in this patriarchal paradigm, but I feel like with Cancer and Capricorn specifically, like that is the axis of the masculine and the feminine as we define it in this paradigm.
Yeah.
So I would say probably somebody who explores that, like the masculine and feminine, especially because it's in the first house of self and seventh house of other. So the polarities, the binaries. Mercury in Cancer too. Somebody who in the first house is very, Mercury in Cancer, sextiling Mars in Taurus. Mars in Taurus is really stubborn. It's really, it's very sure. It's very stubborn. It's very like, I'm going to get this. I don't care how long it takes for me to get there. I am going to do it. And there's nothing that you can say to convince me otherwise. In the 11th house, so groups and communities. Squaring her moon, it's forming that T square with her moon and Jupiter is like the bow being pulled back is what that kind of like shape, and it's pointing towards like the 8th and 9th house, pointing towards the 8th house. So her expression and her like natural ability to perform and to express was informed by fifth house Scorpio, I mean, pleasure, sexuality, but like the depths and the intricacies of sexuality and intimacy and like the shadow side of pleasure, and also informed by her very stubborn ideals of what a society should look like. All of this being pulled back like a bow with her expression and her performance being aimed at the eighth and ninth house of, eighth house being like shared resources, but hers is in Aquarius. So like toward sharing it with the public. The ninth house being, higher learning, being on a stage, publicity. It's in Pisces, so more of a spiritual aspect to it. Interesting. Okay, I'm kind of rambling at this point.
No,
I have
good.
no idea who this person is.
Yes, good job. Good job. Okay, so I would like to introduce Octavia Butler.
Oh.
Do you know who that is?
I
right?
do,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, amazing.
Octavia Butler was a groundbreaking science fiction writer, a revolutionary feminist, and a visionary who is widely considered a prophet for her eerily accurate predictions about our current world. You know, about how she's considered a prophet, right?
The book, the one.
Well, there's a couple. And she was the first major Black woman in science fiction and became a foundational voice in Afrofuturism. Do you know what Afrofuturism is?
I don't know.
I will explain it later. Her work explored themes of power, hierarchy, evolution, and symbiosis with an examination of social issues through speculative fiction. She won the MacArthur Genius Fellowship in 1995, the first science fiction writer to receive this honor. But the reason why she's a household name is because of her prophecies about what's going on right now.
Right.
And for those of you who don't know, she wrote a couple of books in the 90s that, go ahead, what were you saying?
Parable of the Sower? Is this
Octavia? Parable of the Sower. And there's another one too. And it's I can't remember what it's called right now, but I have it in here and I'm going to talk about it. So let's get into it.
Amazing, because I know of her and I know of these books, and I haven't read Parable of the Sower, but I've read like the excerpts that people post because they're like, prophecy, crazy.
It's crazy.
But I don't really know anything about Octavia, so I'm excited to learn.
She's really cool. She was born June 22nd, 1947 in Pasadena, California, and she was the only child of Octavia Margaret Guy, who was a housemaid, and Maurice James Butler, who was a shoe shiner. And she was named after her mother and grandmother, Estelle. So her name is Octavia Estelle Butler, who also helped raise her in Pasadena. Her father died when she was a toddler, and this was a devastating loss because then her mother and grandmother had to figure out how to make ends meet. It was always really difficult for them to make sure that they had enough resources.
Yeah.
This was a really big deal to Octavia. I want to make sure I'm saying her name correctly.
Yeah.
In Spanish, it's Octavia. And then, I don't know, in English, how is it said? Is it Octavia?
I've always said Octavia,
Okay,
but
Octavia. Okay, I'll just say Octavia.
I don't know if that's the correct way. That's just...
She grew up in extreme poverty. Sometimes she had to choose between food and whether or not she could get a book. Her mother worked multiple jobs as a housemaid for wealthy white families and often faced discrimination and exploitation, of course. Butler's mother, what I found on the internet, only had 3 years of education, but she learned to read and worked hard as a housekeeper to make sure that her daughter learned how to read and go to school. And when Octavia said that she wanted to become a writer, her mom got really nervous because she didn't think that she would be able to make money doing that. And she wanted to protect her daughter to make sure that she was able to have all of the resources that she didn't have. But after a while, she started to see that she had talent, and then she eventually came around and was extremely supportive of her. She described herself as awkward, introverted, and painfully shy. She was constantly bullied at school, and she struggled with undiagnosed dyslexia, and teachers misinterpreted her slow reading and inability to finish assignments that in a lot of time as unwillingness to do the work.
Mm.
And I didn't get a chance to read Parable this hour, but I did get a chance to read this book, The World of Octavia Butler by
Mm.
Linnell George. And in there, I just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
show you really quickly some of the things that the teachers wrote, and I was like, oh my gosh, the teachers used to write this in for me when I was in elementary school
Mm.
as well. Confusing, find a better symbol. Hyperbolic, why the guessing game? Must you indulge yourself in self-serving question rather than proof? You're not even trying. Spelling, spelling, spelling. Estelle's, this is a note to her mother. Estelle's most grievous fault is her slowness. She
Mm.
does not complete assignments. She dreams a lot and has poor concentration. I think she was trying to correct this. And then there's more. Just it was irritating to read
Yeah.
that because she wanted so very badly to become a writer, and a lot of people told her that it wasn't going to be possible for
Yeah.
her. One person in particular, her aunt Hazel, um, said, and I don't want to say the word because out of respect, but she said, honey, N word, uh, they can't be writers.
Mm.
And she didn't know that. She had no idea that that was actually a thing, that
Yeah.
that was something that was not possible for her to do. So that
Mm.
was a devastating blow to her. She found sanctuary in books. She felt lonely if she couldn't read, and she also felt lonely if she couldn't write because she had, she was in um, because she was so bullied in
Yeah.
school. By age 10, she was carrying a big notebook around wherever she went, and when she said that whenever she had time she would write in it, and that is when she was saying that way I wouldn't have to be lonely. She graduated from John Muir High School in 1965, which then she went to Pasadena City College with an Associates of Arts degree in 1968. She won her first storytelling contest as a freshman and got a $15 prize, and that finally she felt like her gift was validated.
Mm.
And one of the things too that was very interesting about her is that she would write these positive affirmations about her becoming a writer in the future. I will become a writer. I will
Mm.
do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you had talked about her Mars in Taurus in the 11th
Yeah.
house and the determination that she had.
Definitely.
She was really hard on herself in a lot of these notes, like, you need to stop doing this, you need to start doing that, you need to wake up at
Mm.
3 o'clock in the morning, you need to write for at least 4 hours a day. And
Mm.
this started when she was in high school. This her being hard on herself to try to make herself have structure in order to um, continue to get better at her craft.
Yeah.
Um, During this contest, she conceived of the idea that would become her masterwork, Kindred. That was, I think, one of her first books that she sold. And she continued her education at the California State University at Los Angeles and a UCA extension. She discovered her learning style, and she discovered that she learned better through listening than through reading. And this
Mm.
was so validating to me
Mm.
because I cannot learn reading. When we have readings
Yeah.
at CIIS, I literally have to read it into my phone
Yeah.
and dictate it into my phone. Nothing comes in, and then I
Yeah.
have to listen to it over and over and
Yeah.
over again in order to get it. Do
I'm
you?
similar.
Oh,
Yeah. I
really?
really struggle. I feel like what I have to do is it helps me when I am reading it out loud next to somebody. And
Oh.
as I am reading it and saying it out loud, when it's something that doesn't make sense, I reread it over and over again out loud. And then I have to explain it to
Mm-hmm.
someone so that I can understand. But I
That's what I should
feel,
start doing. I should start explaining it. That's probably why I say so and so much. She was self-directed. She had a self-directed learning approach. And this is a quote: that's when I began to teach myself as opposed to just showing up at school. I think that there comes a time when you just have to do that, when things have to start to come together for you, or you don't really become an educated person.
hmm.
She loved to study a lot of different diverse subjects such as anthropology, psychology, physics, biology, geology, and writing. And one of the reasons why this is important for writers in particular is because if you're writing nonfiction, you want to get to know as much as you can about all these different subjects that you want to include in
Yeah.
your books. And so that's one of the most fascinating things I find about writers is that they can't just come up with these things in their imagination. They
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that they're exact about different
Yeah.
subjects, I guess.
Yeah, you have to do so much research. I feel like if you're writing historical fiction, if you're writing um science fiction, like yeah, most types of like writing novels, there's
Hmm.
so much research that is required if you want to write a good one.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. She participated in Open Door Workshop of Writers Guild of America West, which is a program designed specifically to mentor marginalized writers. And she impressed the science fiction writer Harlan Ellison, who gave her her first honest and constructive criticism after years of lukewarm responses, people just
Yeah.
kind of blowing her off and like, you're never going to be a writer, that kind of thing. But he took her seriously and he wrote some of the episodes on Star Trek, and I guess he wrote like the most
Mm,
famous one, the one that everybody talks about,
cool.
which I'd
I don't
never
know.
heard of, but um, and so he ended up buying one of her short stories that she had written at the Clarion Science Fiction Writers Workshop, which was a 6-week workshop in Pennsylvania. And there she met fellow sci fi writer Samuel R. Delaney, who is also a pioneering Black science fiction author. And that's when, yeah, she sold her two first short stories to Delaney and to Ellison. Then there was a 5-year lull and nothing was sold. And she started to feel like maybe she wasn't going to make it. She started to think to herself, maybe everybody's right. Maybe I'm not smart enough.
Mm,
Maybe this is not something that I'm going to be able to do. Her mother paid more than a month's rent to have an agent review her daughter's work
wow.
and gave up money that she'd been saving for dental work to pay for Butler's Clarion workshop.
Oh wow.
And this enabled Butler to sell those first two
Mm,
stories just to kind of keep her feeling like, you can do
yeah.
this, you got this. Yeah, the her mother sounded like a really amazing woman.
Yeah. Also interesting that in the second house of wealth and resources of Leo, of her like artistic career, that is her independent wealth, that the moon is there. The moon so
Mhm.
often represents the mother. So she's like intrinsically connected to her mother in that area of her life.
I think watching her mother have to be discriminated against, one of the things that she talks about is watching her mother have to go in the back door of people's homes
Mm.
and just being, treated the way that white people do, some white people do, that really bothered her a lot, and that was I think a huge driving force for her to want to become successful so that she could take care of her mom. Because when she did finally get some money, the first thing she did was buy her mom a house, which
Hmm.
I was like, that's so
Mm-hmm.
sweet. Okay, so let me explain what Afrofuturism is. Afrofuturism is a cultural aesthetic philosophy and movement that combines African diaspora culture with technology, science fiction, and futuristic concepts. It's a revolutionary reimagining of the future through a Black lens that reclaims the narratives of the future, challenging the assumptions that futures will be white dominated,
Sick.
and addresses historical trauma while envisioning liberation and healing, combines African spiritual traditions with advanced technological and scientific concepts, critiques present day racism by imagining futures where Blackness is centered and celebrated,
Mm-hmm.
spans multiple mediums literature, film, music, visual art, and fashion, and asks what if questions about Black experiences. What if Africa had never been colonized?
Mm.
What if enslaved people had access to advanced technology? What
Mm-hmm.
if Black women were the heroes of their own stories? So Butler was an Afrofuturism pioneer and was writing about Afrofuturism before
Yeah.
it was even a thing.
Hmm.
She,
Sick.
she centered Black protagonists as complex heroes, not sidekicks or
Yep. Yep.
victims. She explored Black experiences through speculative fiction rather than just historical trauma, and challenged white dominated sci fi that imagined futures without Black people.
Mm-hmm.
She used African spiritual concepts. You were right about the spirituality and non Western philosophies in her work building, and addressed systemic oppression while imagining Black liberation and power. During a 1994 interview with Jelani Cobb, I don't know who that is, but Butler described herself with characteristic honesty. She said, "Who am I? I'm a 47-year-old writer who can remember being a 10-year-old writer and who expects someday to be an 80-year-old writer. I am also comfortably asocial, a hermit, a
Hmm.
pessimist if I'm not careful, a feminist, a Black, a former Baptist, an oil and water combination of ambition, laziness, insecurity,
Hmm.
certainty, and drive."
Wow. That is the most, first of all, 12th house thing that she could say.
Right?
Like, I am a hermit, I am insecure, and I'm all these things, and I am none of these things. But then also the combination of the Cancer and Leo stelliums in her chart. I just feel like all of that is so like,
Yeah, and also her son being at the 0 degree mark of the
yeah,
ascendant. So she's coming out of the 12th house.
yes, she
So
is.
yeah.
Yeah, well, the sun is rising.
Oh yeah.
The sun is rising on the horizon, going, yeah, it's like coming out of the 12th house, but it's also rising.
Right, right.
Just like coming out of the shadows and like, this is who the fuck I am.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the moon and the sun are the two luminaries. So she has most of her chart in the signs of Cancer and Leo. Cancer is ruled by the moon, Leo is ruled by the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And so both of these are the luminaries, which is like somebody who is very much Cancer does it in a more subtle way than Leo sometimes, but Cancer and Leo are both the expressors. They're both the luminaries of like,
Mm-hmm.
listen to me.
Mm-hmm. But it just in a different
in
way.
a yeah.
Yeah. When Charlie Rose asked what then is central to what you want to say about race, Butler responded with typical directness. Do I want to say something central about race aside from here? Hey, we're here. This is who she was. She wasn't preaching about race, but she was insisting on there's a Black presence and the complexity in futures that had previously erased them.
Mm-hmm.
Every Butler story examines who has power, how they use it, and as she said, I quote, "I began writing about power because I had so little."
Hmm.
That was another thing too that I in this book, because there's actually a lot of images of her, just like journals and notebooks, and one of the things that she did a lot was write lists, but also how much things cost. If I
Hmm.
want this, then I need to get this much money. If I
Wow.
want that, then I need to get this much money.
There's yeah, that is so
Yeah.
that like Saturn Pluto moon squaring the Mars in Taurus. Like the Saturn Pluto moon in the second house squaring the Mars in Taurus is very like
Yeah. She wrote about, um, I don't know if she talked about it a lot, but she definitely thought about it and wrote about the financial situation that she was in, that her mom was in, a lot.
mm-hmm.
She understood the importance of seeing herself in literature. Why aren't there more science fiction Black writers? There aren't because there aren't. What we don't see, we assume can't be. What a
Hmm.
destructive assumption. That's
Yeah.
why last week my um my clue was imagining different
Mm-hmm.
different realities.
Yeah.
She's trying to imagine a different reality, and then in doing so, she also profit, which is
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
So I'm just going to kind of talk about her books
Mm-hmm.
because they're really interesting, and I
Yeah.
like want to read all of them now. She wrote the Paternist series. She wrote Pattern Master in 1976, Mind of My Mind in 1977, Wild Seed in 1980, and Clay's Ark in 1984. She took all kinds of jobs to make ends meet while maintaining a strict writing schedule. She would sleep maybe 5 hours a night. She would get up
Mm-hmm.
at 3 o'clock in the morning and she would just write for hours until she had to go to work.
Wow.
And um, A publishing house, when they finally did publish these books, published them as a series, the Patternist series, and they also presented them in a different reading order from the chronological publication, which I don't really understand why they did that, but it explored themes of psychic power, evolution, and hierarchical control. Featured strong Black protagonists centuries before mainstream media caught up, and examined how power corrupts and how the oppressed can become oppressors. Revolutionary for its time. Sci-fi with explicitly Black characters in positions of power. I thought that was interesting too. Thinking about people who are oppressed or who have been oppressed and then turn around and are the oppressors. It
Yeah.
happens over and
Mm-hmm.
over again.
Mm-hmm.
In 1979, she had a career breakthrough with her most famous novel after becoming a full-time author. And it's a time travel novel where a modern Black woman, Dana Franklin, is pulled back into the antebellum South. And you never find out what the time travel mechanism
Mm-hmm.
is. She just kind of keeps going back and forth. And I think the reason for that is because that wasn't the focus that Butler wanted to have on this story. She wanted to, well, let me tell you what it was about. So Dana Franklin was forced to go back in time and save her white slave owning ancestor, Rufus Whalen, to ensure her own existence.
Mm.
And Rufus Whalen was not a good person. Um, he meets Alice, or she meets Alice Greenwood, a Black free woman who becomes enslaved and sexually abused by Rufus. And Dana's trips range from moments to years. Each trip does substantial harm to mind and spirit. And there's the harsh reality sinks in that her existence is part of a dark legacy of sexual violence.
Mm.
It was directly inspired by her mother's experiences. Butler said, quote, "I didn't like seeing her go through back doors. If my mother hadn't put up with all those humiliations, I wouldn't have eaten very well or lived very comfortably. So I wanted to write a novel that would make others feel the history, the pain and fear that Black people have had to live through in order to endure." It made readers viscerally experience the horror and complexity of America's original sin. It's not technically considered a sci-fi, but Butler called it a grim fantasy because she couldn't explain the time
Mm.
travel. Again, I don't really think that that was the point. The point
Yeah.
was like look at like putting it in people's faces and showing them what it was all
Right.
about. Professor Dubé, who is an English and Afro-American studies professor at the University of Illinois, said that Butler persistently revisits slavery in order to challenge the redemptive accounts of U.S. racial history. However, Butler's approach is unique. The signifier of slavery in Butler's novels mutates to refer to a range of abusive practices such as sex trafficking, reproductive oppression, and debt bondage, which are not reducible just to race. So, oppression
Yeah.
in general. In the Paternus series, there her like I said, I'm super excited to read her books because I used to really love sci-fi when I was a kid and I just kind of got out of it. But when I started reading about all of these different stories that she'd imagined, I was like, that is like so interesting and cool. But in the Paternus series, ancient humans with body snatching abilities were basically, they breed their own descendants like cattle in pursuit of creating a new post human species.
Mm.
And in the Xenogenesis trilogy, there was another nuclear apocalypse, and some aliens show up and force what's left of humanity to breed with each other and also the aliens.
Mm.
So she plays with themes that people normally wouldn't play with, but that you can imagine as possibilities.
Yeah.
Um, and these themes are most obvious in Kindred, but appear throughout her work as ongoing systems of oppression. She had an award-winning short story that won Nebula, Hugo, and Locus Awards. There's alien human symbiosis that challenges traditional concepts of gender, reproduction, and consent. And you had said something
Mm-hmm.
about the masculine and the feminine. And
Yeah.
and I was thinking that for Butler, it's not necessarily masculine, feminine. I think just gender
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah.
And she called this story her pregnant man story,
Mm.
exploring what it means to be penetrated, used, needed.
Mm.
Um, and it was groundbreaking in its refusal to make aliens simply good or evil.
Yeah.
She in the Xenogenesis trilogy, humanity has destroyed the Earth through nuclear war, and there's this alien race called the Oankali, and they rescue humans, but they demand genetic trade,
Hmm.
which I thought was very interesting. The genetic trade is what how the Oankali survive and reproduce. They literally exchange genetic material with other species to create hybrid offspring. So they'll take different genetic components
Mm-hmm.
of a species and just pull those components and then create a whole new species with different components from different species.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that
Mm-hmm.
like interesting? What they're trading, the humans contribute certain genetic traits and biological capabilities, and the Oankali contribute their own genetic material and advanced biological abilities. And the payment, both species get hybrid offsprings that are stronger and more adaptable than either parent species alone. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Does it sound like
I
eugenics
mean,
a little bit?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, I feel like I don't know, what I feel the tech bros are up to. Personally, my own suspicions with everything. It
Yeah.
seems like, I mean, eugenics and like it. I don't know. I don't want to get into
Yeah.
into that right
Yeah.
now, but yeah, that is really
Yeah.
interesting.
Instead of trading goods or money, they trade DNA and biological traits, and both parties benefit by getting access to genetic diversity that they wouldn't have alone. And the result is
Yeah,
hybrid children who combine the best of both species.
like Elon Musk has like 20 kids,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't help but think that he's experimenting with them. Like,
That is so scary.
it is really scary.
Yeah,
And
but I
I
wouldn't
don't
put it
have
past him.
any
Yeah.
I just want to say I don't have any facts to prove that theory. That is just something that I suspect.
Yeah. Yeah. I can understand why. There's a catch though. It's not voluntary.
Hmm.
The Oankali see it as necessary for survival, and pure humans or pure Oankali eventually become instinct, and the only thing that remains are the
Extinct.
hybrids. Extinct. Yeah.
Interesting.
It raises question about whether this is salvation or colonization.
Yeah.
The genetic trade was Butler's way of describing biological reproduction as a form of interspecies commerce, but with all the complex power dynamics that real trade relationships involve. So
Mm.
she's kind of exposing capitalism and eugenics in a storytelling
Mm-hmm.
way. They mate with different spheres across the universe, apparently. So they're doing this all over the place. And yeah, anyway, I thought that was interesting. It challenges human concepts of purity, identity, and what makes us us. And the central question is it better to remain purely human and die or evolve and live? It
Hmm.
just kind of opens your mind to thinking about questions that you wouldn't
Yeah.
that we wouldn't normally think about.
The would you rather's, the
Right. Yeah.
yeah, really difficult questions that don't there isn't really like a clear yes and no. It challenges, I mean, it challenges the binary, it challenges morality, it challenges the good versus bad thinking, which I think when I was talking about the sun opposing Lilith in Cancer and Capricorn, right on the ascendant and right on the descendant. Um, well, I guess not right. I guess her ascendant was 22 degrees. But anyway, right
But our
on the
son's
horizon.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the horizon line. Um, it's not just a combination of like a tension between the masculine feminine binary, but I feel like Capricorn and Cancer, like the masculine feminine is kind of like the foundation of the binaries of,
Mm-hmm.
in this patriarchal paradigm, this hierarchical paradigm, man woman is like the foundation of all binaries,
Yep.
of all binary thinking. And so her
I
challenging
agree.
all binaries like that can be seen with that Sun, Cancer opposing Lilith, Capricorn is like, okay, but what if, like,
Yeah.
you think it's black and white, but what about this?
Yeah.
Like, present a situation where it's impossible to say this is right or wrong, this is good or bad.
Right. It's like the cultural complex that was built on gender, the dualism with gender.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what I said to Chris right before I left for school. When I sold my business and decided to go back to school, I was like, if we could just get rid of gender, everything else would be okay.
Yeah, it's true. Everything would completely transform if that started to really dissolve.
Well, I mean, think about it. When you meet someone, the first thing that you want to know is, what gender are you? Are you a man or are you a woman? Because that determines how we actually treat each other, which is really crazy and ridiculous.
It is
and
wild.
we fall into these power dynamics that have been created
that are completely subconscious for the most part.
They're unconscious. Yeah.
Unconscious, just literally embedded in our DNA and how we
Well, I think
operate
it's
in the
embedded in
world.
our indoctrination, in like how we
But
were.
that is our DNA. Information is passed down through generations through our DNA. Like, it's, yeah, that's the whole thing of, like, that's why, like, generational trauma is so powerful, because it's not just, I mean, it is through, like, stories and through, like, watching your parents and, like, the psychological side of it, but it's literally like your
Our
body
physiology.
remembers things. Yeah. And your body, when you reproduce, is giving these cells to your child with the DNA that remembers this trauma. And so it is literally passed down through DNA, these paradigms, this way of thinking.
These dualisms. Yeah, which dualisms are crap. They don't really exist. They're just a fiction. They're a figment of our imagination that has been embedded in us by the society that we live in. So anyway, like I said, I didn't read Parable of the Sower. Chris, our daughter, actually gave him a copy, and I plan on reading it, but she's considered a prophet because of the accuracy of her predictions in this book. It's set between 2024 and 2027. It was written over 30 years ago, and the book reads like today's headlines, literally. In the book, there's climate-fueled disaster fires devastating California. Butler wrote about fires consuming communities in 2024. And the recent LA fires destroyed parts of Altadena, where she's buried, actually.
Wow.
The presidential candidate with slogan "Make America Great Again," she predicted this with this exact political rhetoric, and she says it in two. If I remember correctly, she had heard Reagan say it, and she knew that was going to be something that was going to be used in the future.
Interesting.
There's massive wealth inequality and gated communities, the rise of walled, protected enclaves for the wealthy, corporate controlled politics and privatized police, government services taken over by private interests, which is what they're trying to do right now. Climate refugees and social collapse, that's also happening. Mass displacement due to environmental disasters. The rise of authoritarian populism. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Political movements exploiting fear and division. I mean, all of this. And a virtual reality as escape from a harsh reality. Dream masks in her book Parallel. These trends that I've been hearing about, that who is that really creepy, scary philosopher that has the ear of Musk and
I know. I have looked into him recently. I don't remember his name, and I don't even think he's worth mentioning.
No, I'm not going to say his name.
I'm like,
you're
I
right.
I don't even care that I don't remember his name, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and he has this idea of putting people in rooms with these VR masks.
Yeah,
and so it's
terrifying. And he's like, again, going back to your previous episode on sheer height. This is what I was thinking of when I was like, these people are just dumb.
Yeah.
Like he masks as like a philosopher who is like really innovative and forward thinking, but really he's just like, we need kings.
Yeah.
Like, we actually do need kings, because we actually need to have somebody who rules and people who don't rule.
Right.
And that's his philosophy.
Yeah. I have a theory that I'll have to share with you later. I'm not going to say it here, but I agree 100% with you about the ignorance. And also when he talks, when someone called him a philosopher, and so I had to look up some things about him, and I was like, that's not philosophy. He's
Yeah.
just saying all kinds of weird
Yeah.
shit. It doesn't even make any sense. So the Make America Great Again slogan appears in both the Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, which was written in 1998. The Washington Post and Rolling Stone confirmed that Parable of the Sower predicted a presidential candidate with the slogan "Make America Great Again." And this is in her book is President Christopher Charles Morpeth Donner. And then in Parable of the Talents, the slogan also appears with President Andrew Steele Jarrett, who vows to make America great again. And so Octavia tried to tell us has become a rallying cry during the pandemic and the recent LA fires. People holding up signs that say Octavia tried to tell us. That is that's become a rallying cry. Butler herself dismissed being called a prophet, saying, all I did was look around at the problems we're neglecting now and give them about 30 years to grow into full-fledged disasters. She studied history and patterns obsessively, understanding how environmental destruction plus social inequality equals collapse. And I brought one of her essays. It's super short. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I do just want to read a little bit of it because this has to do with I'm just going to read it to you. So this is called A Few Rules for Predicting the Future by Octavia Estelle Butler. So do you really believe that in the future we're going to have the kind of trouble you wrote about in your books? A student asked me as I was signing books after a talk. The young man was referring to the troubles I described in Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents novels that take place in a near future of increasing drug addiction and illiteracy, marked by the popularity of prisons and the unpopularity of public schools, the vast and growing gap between the rich and everyone else, and the whole nasty family of problems brought on by global warming. I didn't make up the problems, I pointed out. All I did was look around at the problems we're neglecting now and give them about 30 years to grow into full-fledged disasters. Okay, the young man challenged. So what's the answer? There isn't one, I told him. No answer? You mean we're doomed? He smiled as though he thought this might be a joke. No, I said. I mean, there's no single answer that will solve all of our future problems. There's no magic bullet. Instead, there are thousands of answers, at least. You can be one of them if you choose to be. Several days later, by mail, I received a copy of the young man's story in his college newspaper. He mentioned my talk, listed some of my books, and the future problems they dealt with. Then he quoted his own question. What's the answer? The article ended with the first 3 words of my reply, wrongly left standing alone. There isn't one. Isn't that awful? It's sadly easy to reverse meaning, in fact, to tell a lie by offering an accurate but incomplete quote. In this case, it was frustrating because the one thing that I and my main characters never do when contemplating the future is give up hope. In fact, the very act of trying to look ahead to discern possibilities and offer warnings is in itself an act of hope.
Yeah.
Learn from the past. Of course, writing novels about the future doesn't give me any special ability to foretell the future, but it does encourage me to use our past and present behaviors as guides to the kind of world we seem to be creating. The past, for example, is filled with repeating cycles of strength and weakness, wisdom and stupidity, empire and ashes. To study history is to study humanity.
Yeah.
And to try to foretell the future without studying history is like trying to learn to read without bothering to learn the alphabet. I was like, she's talking about astrology.
Yeah.
She doesn't even know that.
Yeah. Astrology in many ways is the study of is history.
It's taking patterns from the past, looking at them in conjunction with the planets, the bodies,
planetary motion,
and all the other bodies and points in the sky, and trying to forecast possible future energies or archetypal energies. And so it's frustrating because it's like everybody's talking about this,
Yeah.
but they're just talking about it without the planets. Like
Yeah.
there's the book The Fourth Turning, there's the book
Uh-huh.
the Storm Before the Calm, that talks about all of these patterns from the past, and the only thing missing are the planets.
Yeah.
So why is astrology considered
Yeah.
crap if that's what we're supposed to be doing? So anyway, sorry, that was a tangent. This is the last page I'm going to read. When I was preparing to write Parable of the Talents, I needed to think about how a country might slide into fascism, something that America does in her book, Talents. So I reread The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich and other books on Nazi Germany. I was less interested in the fighting of World War II than in the pre-war story of how Germany changed as it suffered social and economic problems, as Hitler and others bludgeoned and seduced, as the Germans responded to the bludgeoning and the seduction and to their own history, and as Hitler used that history to manipulate them. Sound familiar?
Yup.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. And also no. Like,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. Yeah. So they take place in the future, and they're set in America collapsing due to our favorite unholy trinity of climate change, wealth inequality, and corporate greed. And the protagonist develops a new religion called Earthseed. Earthseed's central belief is God is change. The only constant is transformation. Lauren is an African American teenager who details everything in her journal, and she has a condition called hyperempathy. She
Hmm.
feels emotions of others due to the side effects of drugs her late mother took while pregnant. She lives with her father, who's a Baptist pastor, her stepmother, and her three half brothers in the remains of a gated community in California. And the community is always terrified because there's like this Mad Max sort of world outside where rape, torture, and violence is allowed to just take place. That's really scary.
Mm-hmm.
If she wrote about that, and a lot of the stuff that was in her books has already been prophesized, it's like, is that where we're going next? Butler's vision of Earthseed, as quoted in the book, God is change. This is the literal truth. God cannot be resisted or stopped, but can be shaped and focused. And that was another thing I thought was
Hmm.
interesting with the connection to
Yeah.
astrology, is that we don't believe as astrologers that we can see the future. We can see like potential energies, and
Yep.
it's what we do with our free will that is
Mm-hmm.
going to help to shape that future.
Co-creation.
Exactly, co-creation. So I thought that was very interesting, and it made me wonder if she ever looked at astrology or knew anything
Yeah.
about it.
That is super interesting.
Prayers only help the person. This is from her book. Prayers only help the person doing the praying, and then only if they strengthen and focus that person's resolve. If they're used that way, they can help us in our only real relationship with God. They help us to shape God and to accept and work with the shapes that God imposes on us.
Sick.
God, right? God is power, and in the end, God prevails.
Yeah, I love that perspective of
Mm-hmm.
divinity, of God is, and what we do is shape. We
Mm-hmm.
create, we form God. We bring God into form through intention, through things like prayer is a form of intention, but it's
Right.
like belief is our intention. Our belief is how we shape God. So if we believe in certain realities, we are shaping this reality in a certain way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it makes sense why like the Christian God, the modern Christian God, is like the shape of a father. We have like
Mm-hmm.
formed with our
Not
intention.
we.
You're right. I need to
I
not.
haven't.
I need to not say we. That God has been shaped and formed by specific demographic
Mm-hmm.
into this image of a father, thus reflecting our entire paradigm as this like patriarchal thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And eerily similar to your last person that we talked about, as far as like shaping things that we can't, that are unseen. I don't know, I just think it's just interesting that you were just talking
Form.
about
Uh-huh.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
shaping things into a form that you can't see,
Yeah. Yeah.
and imagining through imagination.
Uh-huh.
um Uh, Butler did not like Utopia. Her view on Utopia is like that she thought that they were ridiculous. She said, "We're not going to have a perfect society until we get a few perfect humans, and that seems unlikely." Besides, any true utopia would almost certainly be incredibly boring, and it would probably be so overspecialized that any change we might introduce would probably destroy the whole system. As bad as we humans are sometimes, I have a feeling that we'll never have that problem with the current system.
Hmm.
But there's a hopeful ending in one of her books, in the one that she wrote first, which I think is Parable of the sower, and then Parable of the Talents is a like dark dystopian environment. And um humanity begins expansion into the stars and carries the Earthseed ideas. Lauren watches the first starship leave, called the Christopher Columbus, and she doesn't like the name. But she said that there's like some things that you just can't, you have to know which battles to pick. Even utopian societies start with colonization, and that addresses that nothing can detach humanity from that sin, especially when tied to what we call the United States, this land.
Hmm.
Her character Lauren's hyper empathy seems like a disability, but it's actually her strength. And Butler's message is that survival requires empathy, not dominance, and the way forward is compassion, not power.
Hmm.
She had some personal struggles. She battled with severe writer's block throughout her career. She suffered from depression and anxiety. She felt isolated as one of the few Black women in sci fi. She never married, had no children. She devoted her life entirely to writing, and she did struggle financially despite critical acclaim. She identified her core readership as three distinct groups: Black readers, science fiction fans, and feminists. And just, it's really cool how she was able to bridge those three
Yeah.
communities where they that rarely overlap. In 1999, she left California and moved to Seattle. She was a perfectionist with her work, and this is when she started having severe writer's block. And she was also ill, and she was taking some medication, and she's just struggling to complete anything new. Unfortunately, she died at age 58 in 2006 because she fell
Oh my goodness.
and hit her head. And she was working on this vampire novel, and I was watching this scholar who was talking about Butler's works, and she was talking about her different books and what they meant to her. And then she got to this book called Fledgling, and she was like, this is just like a really strange, very weird vampire
Interesting. That's what she
novel.
was working on at her time of death.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, it explored themes of symbiosis, consent, and racial dynamics through vampire human relationships, and challenged vampire mythology by making the vampire a young Black girl, a return to examining power and independence. And she had planned the third parable, the parable of the trickster, about an earthseed community on a new planet, but she couldn't finish it, and unfortunately, like I said, she
Hmm.
passed.
Dang.
Um, she was recognized in the Science Fiction Hall of Fame, and I have a transit chart for that when she was inducted into the Hall of Fame. I was trying to understand her, and because her chart, like I said, just wasn't obvious to me.
Yeah.
And but interestingly, it makes sense because her imagination was able to create these different worlds and different realities that didn't exist before but exist now through her imagination.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
yeah, she has that Jupiter Uranus in her 10th house, and Neptune Chiron Lilith in her ninth house, publishing awards.
mhm.
And Mercury right over her sun.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Did you already say
Venus.
Venus conjunct Pluto in the
Venus
second
right over
house?
her Pluto, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yep.
then Pluto conjunct Lilith,
Oh, yeah.
which
Yeah,
is
just a lot of
interesting.
like activation, a lot of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I feel like Octavia Butler embodies the witch archetype as the ultimate seer and truth teller. She saw the future with terrifying clarity, and she used history books, science journals, and an understanding of human nature that cut straight to the bone. I feel like it's kind of like what Rick Tarnas did, but he took everything from the
Mm-hmm.
past and was kind of like piecing things together to show like how astrology is a legitimate system of knowledge, and then she's taking things from the present and the past, and she's like, this is what you can
Yeah.
expect in the future.
Mm-hmm. Turning it into a work of art.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I love about her though is that in all of her books, what she was saying is that she never does give up hope. All of the protagonists don't ever give up hope, and I think that from what I took away from it is that she is trying to give us the tools to use to recognize dangerous patterns, and using her imagination to envision better
Yeah.
alternatives.
Also important to give that perspective of even if it does go here, even if we do get this worst case scenario, these characters still have hope. These
Mm-hmm.
characters still had a way to like have hope to have a better future. So it's like even if the absolute worst case scenario happens, like maybe it'll be okay,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is important.
Yeah, there's always a way out.
Yeah.
She was a certified genius, whose work has resonated so powerfully because of themes and imagery she was able to bring together. Yet, as she noted, quote, when people talk about sci-fi and blackness together, it is treated as some anomaly, a barrier she spent her career breaking down. And there's oh my gosh, I wish I could remember her name right now, but she wrote this, not Butler, there's another sci-fi writer who is a scholar, a young woman who wrote a book called M, and it's a science fiction book. And so one of the topics that we discussed in one of the seminars when I was at Berkeley was how science fiction can be a way to resist and a way to push back and a way to imagine different realities,
Yeah,
especially for marginalized communities.
definitely.
Um, Butler's essay, Birth of a Writer, reveals her understanding of the psychological challenges facing Black creators. There seems to be I'm quoting her, there seems to be an unwritten rule. It says you aren't supposed to wonder whether, as a Black person, a Black woman, you really might be inferior. Act tough and confident and don't talk about your doubts. If you never deal with them, you may never get rid of them, but no matter. Fake everyone out, even
Hmm.
yourself. Her work stands as proof that confronting those doubts rather than hiding them leads to revolutionary art. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't think or know whether or not she considered herself a witch,
Yeah.
but there were these notes that she wrote to herself that sounded a lot like spells to
Mm-hmm.
me, like the spells that I have written myself and how they end. And she didn't end them with "so mote it
Uh-huh.
be," but she did end it with
Go.
"so be it,
Oh.
see to it."
Which?
After, right,
Uh-huh.
yeah, after she wrote like, I'm going to be a
Yeah.
writer, I'm going to be a best-selling writer, I'm going
Yeah.
to make this much money, and she would always write these
Yeah.
affirmations, and then she would say, so be it. And
So
I'm
be
like,
it.
all she has to do is change those words
Yep.
a little bit, and
Well, and that what she was talking about with her perception of God as like the God is shaped with us through
mm-hmm,
intention focused form. That is a super, I feel like a super witchy perspective as well of yeah, like we have the power to co-create with God. That is a
Mm-hmm.
witchy perspective. Like that is that empowering, like it's me and the divine. It's not me at the mercy of the divine. It's me with the divine.
Yeah, I kind of take it, well, not necessarily what she's saying, but my view of it is we are the divine.
Yeah.
So it's not separate, and there's not some weird dude in the sky with a beard, like
Exactly.
saying,
Yeah.
you screwed up, so I'm gonna, make life
Yeah.
miserable for you, and I just like you for no reason, even though you're a piece of shit, you're gonna be a billionaire. Like, it's not like that. It's
Yeah.
literally like what we're
It is
doing.
the essence of what everything is. Like we are
Mm-hmm.
it. It is everything. And when we focus our intention and tune into that, we can co-create with it, which is also us,
Yeah.
which is also everything else.
Yeah, it reminds me of Brian Swim. We are the universe, like contemplating ourselves, looking in at ourselves. So this is why I would like to invite Octavia Estelle Butler to join our coven. She reminds us that the witch's greatest power isn't about predicting the future, it is in giving us the wisdom to change it. And she showed us that survival requires not just individual strength, but collective empathy, and that evolution means adaptation, not domination.
Mm.
So we can picture her with her notebook and her pen and her lists.
Yeah.
And
Welcome, Octavia. I love this. I love that we have Octavia Butler in our coven now.
Yeah.
What a powerhouse. What a wonderful addition.
Yeah. She stands alone.
Yeah. I feel like true to her like hermit introvert self, I'm like, is she interacting with anybody in their coven meetings?
That's why I was saying she stands alone.
She's just off in the corner, kind of doing her thing, watching everybody. If she was interacting with anyone,
I think she would interact with your mathematician, actually.
Oh, with Miriam?
With Miriam, yeah. Yeah, I think they would have a lot to talk about.
Yeah. I could see that for sure. They would be conceptualizing new realities.
Yeah, exactly.
She's a storyteller. I feel like she and Maya Deren might have a lot to talk about. Maya Deren was the dancer who made the films, who made inspired David Lynch
and played with time.
Yes,
those three.
Yeah,
hang out together.
Yeah. That would be an interesting conversation to witness. Wow, what would they get on to?
Yeah, for sure.
Super interesting. Wow, thank you.
Yeah,
that was wonderful.
Do you have a clue for your person?
Yes. Okay. My person that I will be covering next week. I'll say the invisible. I know.
Cool. This is like the theme of
it seems to be. Yeah. Yeah, I'll say the invisible.
Cool. Can't wait.
Can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah.
This has been another episode of Coven. See you next week.
Bye.